Welcome to a new episode in the Multiverse video series. Today we're going to learn how to build Sassy UML diagrams using R. We're going to use the NomNomL package. So before we get started, let me explain a bit why we need yet another diagramming package for R. So in our particular case, when we were mastering the Mastering Spark with R book, we had a need to create diagrams that were, first of all, easy to use. And also, we wanted to make sure that the diagrams between the different authors writing the book were looking the same. So let me show you some of the different diagrams that we have here that you can build with NomNomL. So as you can see, they're pretty simple diagrams in some cases, and they look very similar. I'll just scroll through some of them. And you might be able to find here some of them that look quite familiar. Actually, these diagrams should look familiar to you. These would be inspired on R for data science. And again, it's kind of like, it's a diagram and it's pretty simple, but it's consistent with how all the other diagrams look. And most importantly, apart from having this consistency, and we wanted to make sure that when building these diagrams, we wanted them to be very simple to build. We didn't want to learn like a whole new language, and we just wanted to keep it simple, keep it easy, keep it clean. So while searching for different libraries to do diagramming in general, not necessarily with R, we found out that there's a particular library that supports UML. And to be fair, before kind of going further into this particular library, NomNomL, I just wanted to mention kind of like what's UML. So UML, it stands for Unified Modeling Language. And, you can read from Wikipedia, the Unified Modeling Language is a general purpose development modeling language in the field of software engineering that was intended to provide a standard way to visualize and design a system. In practice, honestly, in my past experience, I've mostly only used UML diagrams when designing database schemas. So whenever you're creating a system to store information, kind of like that's one of the tasks where you want to make sure that everything is right before you commit to what you're deciding. In practice, honestly, UML diagrams, from my point of view, tend to be too complex, and they're usually not used in practice. And in some way, UML diagrams are just diagrams, but they follow very specific patterns and naming conventions to describe more precisely how objects are related. So the good news about UML, it has a lot of concepts, it has a lot of symbols and representations that you can use. Strictly speaking, if you want to do UML, you need to follow those conventions. I think in practice, most people don't follow them to the book, right? So people are pretty flexible when using UML diagrams, and they kind of like adapt their concepts, and why not? Or at least for me, that's the most useful way of working with UML. It's kind of like using it as a guidance more than a prescription. Anyway, so that's UML, and the library that we found out that we really like was NomNomL. So NomNomL is a JavaScript library developed by Daniel Collin, and it has a very simple syntax. So basically, it allows you to define blocks and define relationships, and you can also apply modifiers to each of the blocks. And there's very few actually, ways of customizing the diagram, and the way that you customize it is with comments. So again, it's pretty simple, and we really like it because it kind of, especially when you're working between multiple people, or when you have to get something out the door pretty fast, it's nice to have to be constrained on the things that you can do just to get something out that looks great, and it's usable and doesn't take you too much time to build. So the other interesting question is, when I was looking at this library, I honestly didn't know what Sassy meant. However, if you're like me and want to know what it means to be sassy, just Look on YouTube for the Mandeville sisters, and they can give you a run-up on exactly how to be sassy. Anyways, so now you know what sassy means, and you know what UML diagrams are. So we put those two things together in a package called NomNomL, which is basically just an R package that uses HTML widgets and the NomNomL JS library. It's a very simple package, but I feel like it's worth sharing it because it can be quite useful in some cases. So how do you use it? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to say packages, install packages, and then just search for NomNomL. That's pretty much it. And once you have the package installed, what I would recommend is that you create a new file and save it somewhere. And the easiest way to preview your diagram would be to say source on save whenever you're playing with these diagrams. So one thing, the main function, the package only comes with one function NomNomL, which basically prints a diagram. So you can say hello. If you were to execute this, basically that gives you a block, right? If you're gonna be sourcing, what I recommend is that you do a print and then you do NomNomL. And with this, basically you have just sketch path where you can be iterating fast on the type of diagram that you wanna build without having to rerun the code. Yeah, so basically NomNomL works with blocks. So you can add basically different blocks, and the blocks are just created for you and they're positioned automatically. There's also relationships. And the simplest relationship you can make is by simply adding a dash between them, which creates a line. So now you have a diagram that says hello, it's connected to test. And you can also add different types of connections. You can add an arrow, for instance. You can make a dash between the two elements, or variations of this particular connection. You can also add, for instance, labels on the actual connection. So you can say here that perhaps you want to describe that hello you're saying hello 5 times and then it's connected to world. Let's just make this one better. Anyway, so you get the idea. It's a pretty simple syntax. You can also create nested structures. So for instance, if you wanted to put something inside A, first of all, you can do A1, A2. And when you save it, it creates this kind of like nested block structure, which is part of UML. But the one that is most useful is you can also create nested blocks inside the block that you're defining. So it looks like that. And again, this is quite easy to build, and it gives you a lot of flexibility to create diagrams. You basically just need to follow these particular patterns, and you can get to create pretty complex diagrams just following these instructions. And you don't need to know more about diagramming or UML to create useful diagrams, which is what I really love from this particular library. So let's try to do, if you look at the R for Data Science book, there is a particular diagram there, which you start with importing the data, right, into R, and then you tidy it. And then after you tidy it, you go to understand it. Understand. And then after that, after understand, you communicate it, right? So this should start looking similar to the R for Data Science diagram, I think. Let's see. Import, tidy, understand, communicate. Let's see. Did I miss something? Import. ID, right? And then ID to understand, and understand to communicate. All right, it kind of looks like that. And then usually in the understand block, the way that the R for Data Science defines a data science workflow is by saying, hopefully I'll remember this correctly. I think there's a few blocks: transform, model, and visualize. Well, if not, it's close enough. So it kind of looks like that, but it's actually a cycle, right? Like from modeling, from transformation, you wanna go to modeling. From modeling, you might want to visualize your data set again, and from visualize, you might want to transform it again. It looks something like this. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, as you can see, it didn't take us that long to create this nice looking diagram, right? Which is actually pretty close to the R for Data Science diagram. And you could definitely argue that it's not perfect. You might want to improve it. If you want to change formatting a little bit, and again, this is not a tool to make, pixel perfect diagrams that look exactly the way you want. NomNomL is really a tool to make quick, good-looking diagrams that might not look exactly the way you want, but they help you communicate quite easily what you want to do. And sorry, I should have also added a few lines here connecting the diagram. Right, it looks a bit better. Import, tidy, understand, communicate. If you want to find additional parameters that you can tweak with your diagrams, you can look at the documentation. And there's a table here of different associations that you might be interested in modifying. And actually, let me see if I can just change my panels, because it would be really useful to just move the viewer on the top and just keep the help. Yeah, something like this. So yeah, so for instance, there's other types of dependencies, and yeah, we'll play around with this diagram, even though it might not be accurate. So this would be one type of dependency that you can play around. Bidirectional connection, dependencies which are dashed, generalization. Honestly, this is a concept from UML, and yeah, so it's an arrow with an empty that is not completely filled, but is partially filled. Let me make this bigger. Anyways, so there's different options that you have for the associations, and you also can have different containers. So we've only used boxes so far, but for instance, we could add start block to this diagram. We call it start s, that goes to import. And this adds a dot, or a dot to the diagram, which usually denotes start. There is also a reference, a note. Actually, the note is quite useful for me when creating diagrams. So suppose that you want to add to understand. Let's see. Here we have understand. Maybe we want to add another block that says this is important. So like you can add this block, but it doesn't look that useful. But if you add it as a note, it kind of gives you some context that this is not part of the diagram. And again, to me, this doesn't look exactly perfect the way that I would want it, but it's good enough for me to create like a very quick diagram that I can easily share and people can understand what I'm trying to communicate. Yeah, so note is pretty useful. Reference, package, frame. Actually, let's just add one more block and try them all. So package, frame, and database. So that's the box. This is the package. Oh, it looks quite similar. Let me just delete everything else. The package. This is the reference. This is the database. This could be quite useful if you're designing, like doing system design and you want to mention where is your database and why not. State, choice, input, state, choice, input. And there's a few others. You can look for the other ones on your own. So let me just revert these to the original diagram. And just to give you a sense of kind of like the level of customization that you can do. And again, there's not a lot of customization that you can do, but there's a few things that you can do. So you can change the arrow side. Actually, let's just copy them all and we can play with them. So again, this is a comment that you can put at the top of your diagram, and yeah, we can just render it and give you a sense of kind of like what are the things that you can tweak on your diagram. One of the things that are useful in NomNomL, you can create you can pass a style parameter, if I remember correctly, and let me just check that. You can pass a style. Oh no, actually you can't. But if you want to have what I've done in the past, if you want to have these be generic, usually I just copy this on a different file, and then whenever I'm rendering NomNomL, I paste my my theme kind of. But anyway, so here's the same diagram. Let me just remove the node, but with a few different colors, and why not? I particularly don't like the how thick the line is, so we can make it thinner. To me also the font is pretty bold, so we can make it smaller. We can increase the padding. Oh, and I have a typo here, transform. All right, something like that. Oh, and since I'm missing the typing here, we want to put it back. Yeah, something like that. But you can also, change your colors, and why not make it terrible, make it better, whatever. Oh, this doesn't look great. But you get the idea. You basically can change a few things. In this case, as you can see, we changed the directions to down. By default, NomNomL, you have the directions to right. You can change the font. You can change a few other things. So the last thing to mention is you can also create, if you wanted to highlight model, for instance, you can also apply those particular visuals to a specific element. And the way you do that is by creating a particular element. So maybe we call it, let's just call it dot highlight. And basically you would want to change the fill. So suppose that I want to do it, I think basic colors also work. Let's try that. So suppose that I want to highlight my model in this particular diagram, and that didn't work. Let's see. I might have to use HTML colors. I don't remember. And actually, we might actually also have to use dot on highlight. Let's see. No, it's not that. Let's see. Shouldn't be that bad. So if you look at the docs, yeah. Oh, definitely. Okay, so you do dot box, which is what we're doing. It might be the case that actually the highlight is a reserved word. Let me just try with box, and then we have the fill and dashed, and then we want to change model to box. Still not changing. Let me just remove actually everything else. And, oh, there's spacing here. Let me just remove this. Okay, still not getting applied. So, oh, okay, yeah. So the reason why this is not getting applied, and this is just one particular thing of NomNomL. What we had was totally fine before, so we can just here do blue. But the reason why this is not getting applied is you need to apply the styles in the first element where, in the first instance where your entry is defined. So in this case, we're defining model in this line. We're not defining it here. So if you want to apply styles, you would have to apply it in model, right? So that's how it looks like, and that looks definitely terrible. So maybe you want to do something like red, green, blue, something a bit, I don't like, reasonable. And I personally don't like that, so you can remove that. Anyways, so you get the idea. Basically, it allows you to create UML diagrams. The syntax is very straightforward, is not as rich as other packages, but it gets you going quite easily by just putting blocks and modifying some of the properties. You won't be able to create every particular kind of diagram, so it's limited to UML diagrams. You won't be able to really position it exactly where you want. But one of the great things is that you can basically get things up and running quite fast. Now, if you want to include this in a notebook, and maybe I should remove all these. So if you want to include all of these in a notebook, it's also quite easy. One of the things that you can do is, first of all, just create a notebook. And once you have the notebook, there's a few things that you have to do. So first of all, you need to include the NomNomL library. Well, actually, you don't even need to include it. You can just copy paste it, right? So you can just copy paste your diagram in whichever notebook you're working on, and then you can just basically render it. So a few caveats. One of the things that you might want to consider doing here is specifying the width and height. So for instance, let's just do 500. And to be fair, sizing HTML widgets can be quite tricky, at least with NomNomL. And what I usually prefer to do is to have two different, like I actually prefer to have like two different blocks, like one that is not actually evaluating or even being displayed. So, and this would be basically the block where I create the diagram the way that I want to. And I basically export this diagram as an image. So I can say NomNomL and then pass a PNG. So I can say here PNG diagram.png. That would be it. So basically what this should do is export the diagram, I think. And then once the diagram is, let me just get on my path. Once the diagram is saved, what I recommend doing is just basically adding your image directly into your notebook. So this would be a good way of just adding your particular diagram, and this way you usually have full control of exactly what are the dimensions that you want. You can make it bigger, smaller, or whatever. If you want full control. If you don't mind that much on exactly how the sizing looks like, then I would recommend you can just keep it this way, and it's also totally fine for the most part. But if you want full control, like I usually recommend doing that. One other thing to mention that is kind of cool with the NomNomL package is you can also use the library in this way. Library NomNomL, which is cool. And then you rather than printing it yourself, what you can do is you can create a NomNomL chunk. And then again, whenever you need this, the chunk is gonna be rendering that way. But again, you want to be careful about sizing and a couple things like that. But it's also like a great way of creating notebooks that are easy to use. Right, this covers most of the things that I was hoping we would cover in this particular video. The last thing to mention is there's many other packages to use for diagramming, and some of them actually provide much better capabilities than NomNomL. NomNomL has like a great use case for simple to use, nice looking diagrams. But if you want more sophisticated diagrams, one of the packages that you can look into is Diagrammer, which has many more fill colors, fonts, styles. You can control the width specifically of each element, and why not. So just something to be aware of, and that could be for a different video. All right, well, thank you so much. I hope that you enjoyed this video and find the NomNomL package interesting.